First thing I want to look at in today's report is the dollar. Um, Clearly a major intervention to try and turn the dollar back up this morning, but I guess after the Brexit vote, the dollar has collapsed. And I've warned that this was going to happen when an asset is artificially propped up for too long or held down for too long, as we saw with gold coming out of that 2015 bottom. Um, when the natural trend takes over, it tends to produce a violent move. We're seeing that in the dollar this evening. Clear break below this intermediate cycle low. At this point, I think it's going to be very difficult for the ECB, the Bank of Japan, to turn the dollar back up. And the next potential spot where there could be a support zone that might help try and at least turn this back briefly would be at the 200-week moving average. All right, here's the weekly chart. You can see the 200-week moving average is already flattened out and is actually starting to trend down slightly. So I don't think the ECB and Bank of Japan are going to be able to keep the dollar propped up much longer. We've already got a failed intermediate cycle in progress. Unless they can pull a rabbit out of the hat and somehow stop this intermediate decline, I think the odds are very high that the 3-year cycle topped right here, and we're now heading down, and artificially propping this up for far too long probably means it's going to be an aggressive and unruly move down over the next year and a half. The next 3-year cycle low is going to be due sometime out here in early to mid 2021. So moving on to gold, today we saw by far the largest attack I have ever seen. About 70 to 100,000 contracts were dumped on the gold market to try and prevent it from breaking through this trend line, and the 50-day moving average. All right, here's the 50-day moving average, and they're hitting it again tonight, but with the dollar in collapse, I think they're going to have a very tough time trying to keep gold suppressed. I'll say again, this is why I've opted for the leap strategy. I can just ignore this manipulation. We know this is a very heavily manipulated market. The banks have huge short positions that they are at risk of getting caught in a short squeeze. So they are going to pull out all the stops to try and turn gold back around. But with the dollar in collapse, I think it's going to be pretty hard for them to stretch this intermediate cycle out further. And if they do, if they were to manage to break below this low and continue the intermediate decline, it doesn't really matter to me. I've got till into 2021 on leap, so I've got plenty of time to hang on to whatever shenanigans they want to pull here in the next week or two. And as I've been saying in the stocks, I'm pretty sure the plunge protection team is going to try and prop this market up through the at least into the new year. Apparently, we're going to get some kind of trade deal signed, but I'm also pretty sure that there is going to be no substance to it. And I think this was probably an orchestrated event. Trump released a tweet, as he's done over and over for the last year, and I think they coordinate this with some intervention in the futures market. But you can see the market immediately tried to sell that news, and they had to come back in and continue to prop this up. So naturally, I think we're probably going to get the tendency will be to sell this news, but I think the plunge protection team will do all they can to keep this propped up through the rest of the year, through the holiday buying season and into January. So I would not be a buyer or a seller of the stock market right now. And as we get later in this daily cycle, once we get past the new year, then I think we have the opportunity to get a real correction down into an intermediate cycle low. But I'll say again, for those of you that think this could possibly morph into some kind of a bubble, and we just keep going and going, and you want to be long, just in case that possibility were to unfold, then just put your stop right here below the last daily cycle low. That'll protect you. You won't lose much if you get stopped out, and if this does morph into some kind of a bubble, parabolic bubble phase, then you'll be in and you'll catch that bubble.